right, thank you all for coming. Like to recognize that and appreciate that we're holding this meeting tonight within the traditional territories of the Tushat and the Wupachesset First Nations. My name is Penny Cote. I'm the director for Sproat Lake electoral area. I'd like to introduce to you the ACRD planning staff, Mr. Erg, General Manager of Planning. Thank you all for coming. Like to recognize that and appreciate that we're holding this meeting tonight within the traditional care. Yeah. Okay, I'd like to introduce Mr. Erg here, General Manager of Planning and Development. Mr. Alex Dyer over there on the repeat. Planning Manager, and Amy Anaka, Planner, and Charity Halberg Dodds, Planning Technician, and she is on the screen. Hi, Charity. There we go. Okay, so this hearing is being held in the ACRD boardroom and electronically by Zoom. It's being recorded and live streaming on the ACRD website. So would staff please provide instruction on how to participate in this hearing? Thank you.
Yes, happy to. Thank you, first of all, everybody, for joining us here tonight. We've got a number of people in the boardroom and on Zoom as well. If you are watching the live stream on the website and wish to join the meeting, the details on how to connect are available in the Zoom meeting invite document that's linked on the public hearing webpage. We just want to quickly start off by highlighting the tools that we have in Zoom that will help you participate. If you are participating online, you have the option to turn on or off your video and mute or unmute your audio so other meeting participants can see you and hear you. We ask that you keep your audio muted at all times unless you are going to speak in order to cut down on the background noise. There will be an opportunity to speak after staff introduce the OCP amendment bylaw and summarize the agency and First Nation referrals. For those participating in person here in the boardroom, we ask that you use the microphone system we have at the table or at the podium. So before speaking, you'll press the silver button at the base of the speaker, and it'll zoom in on you and allow you to speak and allow those on Zoom to hear you. So when the chair calls upon members of the public to comment on the bylaw, we ask that you either put your hand up or call out that you would like to speak. Once you've been recognized by the chair, we ask that you state your name and address followed by your comments or questions. If you are online, you will unmute yourself, and if you are in person here in the boardroom, again, you will use the microphone system that we have at the tables. When using Zoom, I also want to highlight that there is a chat feature that's accessed on the controls on your screen. If you'd like to make a comment or ask a question at any time, please feel free to do so. All comments will be addressed by staff as the public hearing moves along. These comments will be brought forward when the chair asks for public comment. So if you have a question, feel free to put it in there. There will also be a final opportunity prior to the end of the public hearing to ask any final questions or comments on the bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So the subject of this hearing is bylaw P1443. This bylaw is an official community plan amendment to the existing Sproat Lake official community plan bylaw P1310. If you have any questions or comments about any other unrelated topic, I'd ask that you contact the regional district staff after this hearing has been terminated. So would staff now read out the notice of the public hearing?
Thank you, Penny. I will now read out the public hearing notice. A public hearing for residents and property owners in electoral area D, Sproat Lake, has been scheduled to consider bylaw P1443. Hearing details, Thursday, March 9th, 2023 at 7 p.m. Public hearing for bylaw P1443, Sproat Lake Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw. Electronic call-in or in-person attendance at the ACRD office, 3008 5th Avenue, Port Alberni, BC. A public hearing for residents and property owners within electoral area D, Sproat Lake, will be held to consider bylaw P1443. This bylaw is an official community plan amendment to the existing Sproat Lake OCP bylaw P1310. As part of the zoning bylaw review project, amendments are being considered to the 6 ACRD electoral area OCPs to align OCP policies and objectives with the proposed updated zoning bylaw. Available online at www.acrd.bc.ca/ZB review. The public hearing will be held by the Director for Electoral Area D, the alternate director, or the chairperson of the regional district. The board resolution making this delegation, bylaw P1443, and all relevant background documents are available for review in the ACRD office or online at www.acrd.bc.ca/events/9-3-2023. This public hearing will be recorded and live streamed on the ACRD website. Planning staff are available to answer questions in person, through email, or by phone during regular office hours, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., Monday through Friday, from February 22nd to March 9th, 2023, excluding statutory holidays. Anyone who feels their interest in property will be affected by proposed bylaw will be afforded a reasonable opportunity to be heard. If you wish to participate in the public hearing in person, electronically, or by phone, full instructions to do so are available online at www.acrd.bc.ca/events/9-3-2023, or can be provided by contacting planning staff by email at planning@acrd.bc.ca or by phone at 250-720-2700. The public hearing will be conducted in the ACRD office. Written correspondence can be submitted to the ACRD by one of the following methods: hard copy delivered to the ACRD office in person or by mail, email sent to planning@acrd.bc.ca, or fax sent to 250-723-1327. Email or fax correspondence will only be considered received if receipt confirmation is provided by ACRD staff. Written submissions provided in advance of the public hearing must be received by the ACRD no earlier than 8 a.m. on February 22nd and no later than 4 p.m. on March 9th to ensure their inclusion in the public record. Correspondence submitted ahead of the public hearing outside the parameters will not be included.
Thank you. So the purpose of a public hearing is to receive input, written or verbal, from any person who believes that their interest in a property is affected by the bylaw. The board will receive full minutes of this hearing before voting on the bylaw. Staff are taking minutes that summarize the issues raised, so please speak clearly to ensure accuracy. So would staff now please introduce the proposal?
I'm happy to.
Thank you.
My apologies in advance. I'll speak for a bit, but we'll introduce what the bylaw is all about, and then the input that we've received so far, and then there'll be an opportunity to add your own. So bylaw P1443 is an official community plan amendment, as you've heard, that relates to the existing Sproat Lake OCP bylaw P1310, which was originally adopted in 2014. The OCP amendment bylaw generally includes updates to align OCP policies and objectives with the draft updated zoning bylaw. As part of the zoning bylaw review project, all 6 of the electoral area OCPs in Banfield, Long Beach, and the 4 in the Alberni Valley are being amended to align OCPs, or to align those policies with the draft zoning bylaw. So first of all, I just want to highlight that it's important that the comprehensive rewrite of the ACRD zoning bylaw is not being considered as part of this public hearing, and that the zoning bylaw remains in draft form. Now, any changes to the updated zoning bylaw can still be considered, and staff continue to engage with members of the public and the board and our committees on refining that draft. The most recent draft we have available is the October 2022, and that can be found on the ACRD zoning bylaw review webpage. Now, on February 22nd of this year, the board endorsed an anticipated timeline for the zoning bylaw review project, which includes which is available on the zoning bylaw review webpage that you heard about earlier, if you'd like to have a look at it. The report provides an update on the project where it sits today and the timeline for the consideration of the OCP amendment bylaws and the eventual consideration of the zoning bylaw. We expect that the board would consider the zoning bylaw a first time in May 2023. Following this, a public hearing for the updated zoning bylaw is anticipated for June of this year, which will provide an additional opportunity for public input on zoning related items. So back to the bylaw at hand, the Sproat Lake OCP amendment bylaw that we have here today was given first reading by the board in April 2022. A first public hearing for this bylaw, which I know a few of you attended, was held on December 5th, 2022 again. The board delegated a second public hearing to be held following feedback received on the level of communication that the ACRD had with the public. And at that time, staff also highlighted 7 properties on map 2 that required changes to their land use designations. So the board amended map 2. They delegated the second public hearing to be held, which is the public hearing tonight, and gave the bylaw second reading at the January 11th board meeting. There are a number of staff reports to the board from December and January that are included with the background information available for you here tonight. A copy of the bylaw as well as all of the background information is linked on the ACRD website if you are connecting online, and hard copies are available at the back of the room if anybody is interested. The bylaw with second reading provides a line-by-line list of the amendments within bylaw P1443, a consolidated version of the OCP text. Incorporating those proposed amendments is also available, and the updated land use designation and development permit area maps as well. So again, all of that is linked on the ACRD website if you're online or in person here in the boardroom. Just quickly highlighting the changes that are proposed as part of this bylaw. The ACRD has added riparian development permit area guidelines and environmental protection policies for the construction of new docks and moorage facilities on the water at the lake. The expanded development permit guidelines intend to consider any potential environmental impacts or water quality impacts prior to new dock construction. An assessment from a qualified environmental professional would be required to consider aspects such as the use of stable materials that do not have a negative impact on water quality, discouraging the use of styrofoam, and the placement of docks on critical fish habitat areas. Now, again, it's important to highlight here that any restriction or any proposed restriction to the size, the extent, or the width of a dock, or the minimum setbacks between neighbors, or the improvements that are located on a dock are not proposed within this OCP. They are part of that updated zoning bylaw that I mentioned before, which again remains in draft form. The development permit guidelines that are included within this bylaw are only intended to consider the protection of water quality and the protection of environment and fish habitat. So as part of the new development permit guidelines, the OCP amendment bylaw would also extend the riparian development permit area boundary, which is the DPA 1 boundary that we have in the OCP, into the foreshore by including all land and water within 30 meters of the natural boundary of a major stream, or 15 meters of a minor stream, measured horizontally in both the upland and the foreshore directions. The intent of the amendment here is to extend the development permit guidelines and requirements to the construction of new docks and new foreshore improvements. And along those lines, again, with the riparian areas, where the ACRD has now defined Sproat Lake as a major stream, which would extend the riparian development permit area from 15 meters as it currently sits to 30 meters from the natural boundary of the lake. This amendment would not introduce any increased building setback, or would not create a no-build zone within that area, but instead intends to expand the protection of the natural environment within that riparian area and to protect the water quality of Sproat Lake if there's any development to occur in that area. And just highlighting that since the OCP was adopted in 2014, Great Central Lake has always been included as a major stream with a 30-meter development permit area. So there is some examples of that, as well as the Sproat River and the Somas River and the Stamp River. Another change that you would see throughout the OCP bylaw is the standardizing policy wording across all of the 6 OCPs where appropriate. The new zoning bylaw will need to comply with the policies and the minimum lot sizes in each of the 6 OCPs that we have in the region. So we've worked to align that wording where possible. We've updated the Local Government Act references, as that act has been comprehensively updated since the adoption of this OCP in 2014. We've updated the Agricultural Land Commission references that better align with the provincial regulations for uses on land in the ALR, and would allow for new opportunities such as secondary residences in the ALR, agritourism accommodation, and gathering for an event. Again, all on uses within the agricultural land reserve. The amendment bylaw includes a statement about consideration of the housing needs reports in each of the area OCPs. As a bit of background, the ACRD received the Sproat Lake Housing Needs Report in 2021, and the recommendations of that will be a part of future comprehensive updates to the OCPs. But we did reference the need to look at housing within the community in this amendment bylaw. We've revised the wording and the definitions to, again, better align with the zoning bylaw, including accessory dwelling units, flood construction level, manufactured home, mobile home, modular home, and home occupations and home industry as examples of those definitions, and they can be found in the front of the OCP. The amendment bylaw revised flood construction level guidelines in the natural hazard development permit areas to align with the zoning bylaw, again, which already references a 200-year designated floodplain. And finally, we have updated the land use and development permit area maps. As I mentioned, we have large versions on the back wall, and we have smaller versions if you'd like to take any away, and they're also linked on the website. The maps have been updated utilizing our new GIS mapping database with a new map format, improved labeling, data source tracking, and improved readability overall. I think I'll pass it over to Amy so you can stop listening to me. Thanks.
Just a few more things to go over. So I will now highlight the referral responses that we received from a number of agencies and First Nations. And so a copy of those responses received, as well as a summary table of the responses, is available on the website, on the ACRD website, as well as copies available at the back of the room. And so that document is this one here. So these will form part of the public hearing report that will be considered by the board, and the agency referral comments were also received, the same ones were received at the December 5th public hearing, and were included in the public hearing report received by the board, and a copy of that is also at the back room. So there were 23 agency and First Nation responses received in total. Agency responses received either noted they were in support of the bylaw, subject to the reasons outlined in the responses, that their interests were unaffected, or that they had no concerns, comments, or objections. And so staff are also continuing to engage with these referral agencies as well as the First Nations, where they have any questions, raised that can be addressed as a part of the updated zoning bylaw project, or as part of the longer term comprehensive updates to these OCPs. And now just touching on public correspondence quickly. So there were 4 letters of public correspondence received ahead of the public hearing. And so again, this correspondence is available for public review on the ACRD website, and that's it here, or copies are available in person at the back of the boardroom there. The correspondence will also form part of the public hearing minutes, just like the referral agency comments. And so this correspondence generally references the provisions in the draft updated zoning bylaw or potential regulatory bylaws, rather than policies in the OCP amendment bylaw, which is the subject of this public hearing tonight. So this input can be considered by staff as we work to complete the final draft of the updated zoning bylaw, and that's to be considered by the board in May under the anticipated timeline. I will also highlight that a number of the letters that were received at the December 5th public hearing were also included in the public hearing report that was received by the board. And so finally, public consultation and advertising. So the notice for this public hearing, which I read out earlier, was advertised in 2 consecutive issues of the Burnett Valley News. So it was in the February 22nd, as well as the March 1st news. And this is a requirement of the Local Government Act, and the ACRD Development Procedures Bylaw includes statements that public hearings are governed by the Act and that public notices shall be issued in accordance with the requirements of the Act. This notice was also published on the ACRD website on February 22nd, linked in the event calendar on the website and on the Zoning Bylaw Review Project webpage. And as well as an opportunity to provide supplementary notice for this public hearing, dates associated with amendment bylaws, the board directed staff to place 1 or more sandwich board signs in the community. And so 2 sandwich board signs advertising the public hearing were placed in the Sproat Lake area to provide that supplementary notice. Staff also highlight the public hearing date was included in Director Cote's Sproat Lake community newsletter that was mailed out in mid-February. And a reminder of the date was provided during the Sproat Lake Community Association AGM on February 27th. And lastly, over the course of the Zoning Bylaw Review Project, staff have undertaken a number of online as well as in-person engagement activities, a variety of advertising to gain input on that draft zoning bylaw. and associated amendments to the 6 electoral area OCPs at various stages. And as Alex previously stated, the draft updated zoning bylaw is in draft form. The most recent version is October 2022, can be found on the project webpage, and we really are still encouraging members of the public to engage with the planning staff in person, by phone, by email. If you have any more comments or questions or anything about that draft zoning bylaw, leave it there for now.
You guys are finished? All right, thank you. Thank you. There was an issue, I think, with the previous public hearing where concerns about advertising wasn't really, the message really wasn't getting out there to the public, but I think you've done a very adequate job this time, above and beyond, so thank you for that. So at this time, we'll now hear representation from members of the public. So please wait until you've been recognized by myself. Unmute your microphone if participating by Zoom. Raise your hand if you're seated around the boardroom, and come up to the podium. Please state your name and address before beginning, and we will hear everyone wishing to speak for the first time before allowing for second comments. So it's your opportunity to speak at this time. Okay, I see Richard Warren.
Yeah, I just unmuted myself. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Yeah, I really just have a question. In looking at the existing zoning bylaws and the new zoning bylaws, the categories are a little different, and I'm interested in RA3, which is acreage residential 3. It exists in the current bylaws, but I don't see it represented in the new one. So I wanted to know what will happen to land that's currently RA3 if the new zoning bylaws are passed.
Thank you, Richard. Yeah, we have updated many of the names, and the RA3 zone became the R1 zone, I believe. Yeah. So all the current RA3 zone properties are proposed to be R1 in the updated zoning bylaws. So you're going to want to reference that when you're looking at the draft October 2022 version.
Okay, that answers the question. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Can I quickly add to that? On the zoning bylaw review project webpage, there is a table that lists all of the current zones and then the abbreviations for what would be in the draft.
Okay, I didn't see that. That would explain it all. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you. Next. Yes, please. Come up to the podium, and or if anybody wants to come up and have a seat, you're welcome to. Oh, you have to, yeah, press the button.
Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, I only became aware of this new bylaw, this change to the official community plan, like just a few days ago. And so I did like a quick search. I saw the sandwich board on Faber Road. And so I did a quick search, and I'm not really good at finding my way around all these documents and stuff. So I spent a lot of time and really didn't get too far with it. But then I actually came across a letter from the Agricultural Land Commission to the district with respect to a recommendation of a minimum size of 8 hectares for properties that were going to be subdivided, I suppose. And they're, let me just see if I can find this here. It was to, you should be familiar with it, Amy, because I think it was to you. Just let me find it. I just have it on my email here somewhere. But anyways, I was really concerned about the 8 hectare minimum size for subdivision, because when I went and I looked at the parcel sizes of different ALR properties within the district, 75% of them did not meet the criteria. They were less than 8 hectares. So it's concerning to me because, you know, the ALR was developed with keeping farmland protected. And if something like that were to go ahead and they were to actually say you can't subdivide anything less than 20 acres, and then who's to say a few years down the road, they don't just say, well, you know what, you don't have 20 acres, you're no longer in the ALR anymore because you really don't meet the criteria. So that really concerned me a lot because I feel like we really need to protect our farmland, especially now. So I wonder if, I'm still looking for that too.
I have it here, Sherry.
Do you?
Yeah, it's in the agency referral response from the Agricultural Land Commission,
Yeah.
which is dated October 13th, 2022. And they had, the Agricultural Land Commission suggests that we increase the minimum lot size in the ALR and agriculture areas to 8 hectares. So that is not something that we've included in the,
No, but is that something they recommended? Is that something that you're considering?
no.
So that's not going to ever happen?
The amendment bylaw as it is right now has a 2 hectare minimum lot size on the rural use and the agricultural use. And then a 1 hectare minimum lot size in the residential use areas where there's on-site services or 0.24 of a hectare, which is 0.6 of an acre in the residential use where there's at least
Right.
1 common services, whether that's community or communal. So, I mean, what the Land Commission is attempting to say here is that we're setting an expectation for future subdivision of
Right.
ALR land by having smaller lot sizes.
Right.
But at
But
the
they
end of-
also clarified that they don't feel like you can do anything on less than 8 hectares, which is 20 acres. So and we know that's not true because there's many farms that do a lot just on 2 acres.
At the end of the day, the ACRD takes the approach that the Agricultural Land Commission has the final say on subdivision of land in the ALR. If a property owner owns land in the ALR, they have to apply to the Land Commission.
Yeah.
And then that gets referred to us. So at the end of the day, if the Agricultural Land Commission wants to restrict subdivision, they have the authority to do so in the Agricultural Land Commission Act. But that doesn't necessarily fit what we've heard from our communities as we develop the OCPs, that
Right.
2 hectare or 5 acre minimum lot size on the rural lots is appropriate, and then the 0.6 acre minimum on service lots in residential.
Okay. And also, because like I said, I was trying really hard to find information about what exactly is entailed in all this. I heard from other people who weren't able to be here tonight that there was a lot of restrictions being imposed on non-ALR land in this bill. And also there's a few on ALR land as well. And I'm not clear what they are because I can't find them. So maybe you could help me with that.
Yeah, there are, as I mentioned in the OCP amendment bylaw, we've updated the definitions and the policies that align with some agricultural use policies that we're changing in the draft zoning bylaw that we proposed to change in the draft zoning bylaw. A lot of those are more permissive around meeting the Land Commission policies on things like agritourism and conservation and gathering for an event and having smaller secondary residences on land in the ALR. So the intention of the zoning bylaw, which again is not a part of this hearing, but this would certainly lead towards that, is to be more permissive on agriculture where we can, and then to lean on the province to enforce their own regulations within the ALR.
So is there something specifically in here about how your buildings can only be so high under this new, because I was told that would sort of put our barn right off the go. We wouldn't be compliant, and as well as somebody else's. And do you know of anything like that? Or because like I said, I can't find it. So and it's hard to find it, even though you have like amendments and stuff like that. It's really hard for people to read this and understand it, right? I hope I'm not the only one, but I'm sure I'm not the only one. Yeah.
Appreciate that. Building heights are again regulated by the zoning bylaw, and there is building height restrictions in each of the zones that currently exist, and they're not proposing to change in the updated zoning bylaw. We've changed how we calculate building height to the peak of a roof rather than the midspan of the roof. But the draft zoning proposes to update and increase the allowable height for accessory buildings and principal buildings to accommodate for that. So it should not have an impact, but again, I encourage you to have a look at the zoning bylaw specifically, and we can have
And which one of
conversation
those
about
big
that.
stack of papers out there is that?
The zoning bylaw is not here
Yeah.
tonight, so that's
Oh,
that's
okay.
one you'll find online. But
Okay.
if you contact planning staff either in person, by phone, or email, we can help you get a copy of it, and we can help explain what the
That would be great.
what the
That would be
restrictions
great.
might be.
Thank you.
Could we get your address, please?
Oh, sorry, 9401 Central Lake Road.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
We do have a comment online that I think
Okay.
someone from Nancy, but we had one from Delone Abercrombie first. She says, no sandwich board on corner of McCoy Lake Road for Sterling Arm residents. The sandwich boards are going to be used in this age of social media and internet usage to access information, and there needs to be more strategic placement of many boards. We did have 2 sandwich boards in the community. They were at the Harold Bishop Fire Hall, and then at the near Sproat Lake Landing at the turnoff on Lakeshore. It's a large area, and it's difficult for us to cover each of the entrances into the community. We've been consistent with the OCP amendment bylaws, so we've been placing 2 sandwich boards in each of the areas ahead of that meeting. So I hear your concerns, but it can be challenging. Thank you.
Thank you. Did we get the address?
I don't have an address for her, but Delone Abercrombie actually submitted a piece of correspondence as well.
Great.
Actually, yeah, that wasn't my submission. I do have a submission. I'll put my hands up later and I'll give you my address.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Nancy Blair, you have your hand up. You want to unmute?
There we go. Hi, good evening. Yeah, I was just wondering if you wanted me to raise my issue now, or will it come up later during the meeting?
Sure. If you'd like to speak to your issue, that'd be great. We do have the letter is included with the letters and correspondence, but if you'd like to speak to it, that'd be fine.
Okay, I'll try to be brief about it. I sent a letter just the other day, and I was writing to draw attention to the issue of light pollution as it relates to decorative lighting on docks in particular. The fact that the lights are reflected in the water, and it's very, very difficult to see our lovely dark skies with these very bright dock lights. And I was just, I see that, worldwide there's a movement actually to preserve dark skies, and not just for the enjoyment of humans, but to protect nocturnal animals, fish, aquatic animals, etc. And I see that I've been advised that in the bylaws there is provision for lighting guidelines around new development, multifamily homes, commercial and industrial properties, but I don't see anything relating to residential properties. And I see that it's regarded as a nuisance issue. I'm wondering how a nuisance issue affects wildlife in particular. But over the years, there's many, many reasons why wildlife in our community have been disappearing, but I'm sure that lighting has something to do with it. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. I've heard complaints from people around the community having similar complaints, and where spotlights actually shine right across the lake, right into other people's properties. Very bright spotlights. So staff will be looking into that.
Yeah, we will. Thank you for that, Nancy. As we had mentioned in the email back and forth, that lighting is a nuisance issue that could potentially be regulated through a regulatory bylaw that the ACRD could introduce. The ACRD does not have a bylaw like that right now. We deal with nuisances like unsightly premises and noise, and things like that. But if we wanted to look at the development of a nuisance bylaw around that, we could do that. Alternatively, we could include dark sky policies in our OCPs as well. And I think as part of future comprehensive updates to the 6 OCPs, I think we need to take a closer look at what we can do about promoting dark sky policies in the community. Thank you for raising that.
May I just add briefly that we're in a position where our veranda, and actually all of our lakefront view, looks out onto a property, actually in the 2 homes that I have privilege to have use of, with extremely bright lighting, and we can't even get away from it sitting on our veranda. So it's not like we traditionally would go down to the dock to look at the skies, but we can't even avoid it anywhere in our house. So it is an issue. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have your letter and photographs here that show what you're talking about. And there's copies at the back if anybody would like to see, or online. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Is there anyone else online or in the room that would like to speak? Yes.
Excuse me, Mark Marley, Great Center, or 11,000 Central Lake Road. In the memorandum, page 6 of 7, item E, it talks about docks not extending over marshes, productive foreshore areas, including fish area or critical areas such as fish habitat. Is the entire lake not critical fish habitat? So how does staff feel they'll administrate that?
So that would be that'd be regulated through the QEP recommendations would be the intention. So if you're placing a new dock, or you're placing a new or constructing a new foreshore improvement, the DP guidelines would require that you engage a registered professional biologist, and they would assess the site on a site-specific basis. They identify anything that should be avoided, or if they make recommendations that a dock should be constructed in a certain way to avoid having a negative impact on the fish habitat. So we would include that within the development permit, and that's how we would do it.
Okay, thank you. I see Abercrombie again, hand up, and Nancy Blair, your hand is still up. Thank you.
So are you okay? So are you okay with me talking?
Yes, please.
Okay, great. So yeah, I mean, I just want to say, I do appreciate that you do these meetings. Sorry?
Your full name and address, because
sorry, Delone Abercrombie, and the address is 8740 Sterling Arm Drive.
Thank you.
So yeah, you know what? We've had a place on the lake for like almost 30 years. So we're not new residents, like we've been here a long time. And I do appreciate the fact that, there have been issues, and that people that like the ACRD is being asked to look into them. And so I do appreciate your involvement. The thing is, I think there are 3 large things that have been ongoing for at least the entire time that these bylaws have been in development. And they've been addressed many times by people. And yet when I look at the bylaws, I never see them change. And the first one is really, regarding 20.4 DPA 1 foreshore and riparian area protection. So the previous guidelines were 15 meters in the upland direction. It is now changed to 30 meters in upland and foreshore direction. And I know there's been a lot of feedback that that's unnecessary. And I really think it is unnecessary. Now, if you think that on, say, Lakeshore Road, where the lots are really flat, you need to have something special for them, then there has to be something special for them. But overall, I just think it's completely unnecessary, and especially for the foreshore direction. Like, for as long as I've been on this lake, fisheries has very carefully monitored what is going on the foreshore direction. And if anybody tries to do anything, if they try to take down trees or bushes, if they try to bring in sand or anything, fisheries is on you, like they're on you. I really don't think we needed add layers of bylaws policing that foreshore direction and adding permits and all kinds of layers of bureaucracy to doing that. I just think it's already being looked after by fisheries. They already do a good job. You're fined extremely heavily if you try to make any changes. So I just don't think heading into the foreshore is necessary. And I think there's been a lot of feedback that 30 meters, even in the upland direction, is too much, 30. And I think we need to go back to 15. And I don't understand why, after all the feedback, there still isn't any changes. The second thing is all the stuff about the docks. Again, I just feel like there's layer on layer on layer. I mean, I think less is more. I don't know why we need so many bylaws for docks. Yes, there were some problems with a few people building docks that were too big. And yes, I know the Sproat Lake Community Association asked if we could look into this, but the association board last year, well, in 2022 June, wrote a letter saying that they can't agree with the guidelines that are being developed for these docks, that there's just too much, all the permitting, all the variances. I just don't think all the permitting and variances, all those layers are necessary. I think it can be dealt with in a much more simple way. And I know that you've put a few things with regards to docks, specifically in terms of like, it can't sit on the foreshore, which again, is like, it can't sit on the foreshore. And yet we have a lake that goes up and down, at least my lot, it goes up and down by, I don't know, at least probably 25 feet between the summer and the winter. So in the winter, it's never on the foreshore. But in late, probably by sometime in end of June until September, it sits on the foreshore. And to try and say, oh, it can't sit on the foreshore, it just seems so unreasonable. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And I really feel like if you want to leave the size of docks in your major bylaws for everybody else, then you need to bring in the size of docks for Sproat Lake into this bylaw, that we specifically at Sproat Lake have different bylaws governing the size of our docks. And the size that we've got now using Crown land guidelines doesn't make any sense. Crown land guidelines are for Crown land. We're private land. They don't need the same guidelines. They're not developed using the same processes or protocols. And so on most major lakes that I've been able to look up, the dock sizes are much more liberal. On Okanagan Lake, 10 meters square. So I really feel like that it needs to be brought into these guidelines, the size of docks for Sproat Lake, if you don't want to impact the other areas. And I really feel that the minimum size, what the reasonable size is 8 meters square for the size of a dock. That's about 25 by 25 square feet. And that gives you enough room to have a boat slip, a boat, and maybe a gazebo, and really not much else. And the other piece, it's all these variances that people are going to be required to have because of the length the dock is allowed to go out or not. Again, I feel that 15 meters is probably reasonable for most people. Maybe not. There's a few spots, maybe not. But to minimize how many people have to ask for variances and how much has to go into like all the major bureaucracy and all these permitting. I just feel like all this permitting and all these surveys is just added layers of expense, and it's just really, really unnecessary. So that's everything.
Thank you. Does staff want to reply at all, or?
I just want to mention the development permit areas. So for a water body the size of Sproat Lake within the regional district, any other water bodies, whether lake or salt water on the ocean, the development permit area is 100 meters, and it has been that way for over 10 years. Or sorry, 100 feet, 30 meters, not 100 meters. For over 10 years, and as well as the development permit areas over the water, we have had those in Bamfield for over 10 years, and have worked well. Again, that's an area that has sensitive habitat, both fish habitat, eelgrass, and we've issued a number of development permits. They've been constructed in a way meeting good environmental practice and in protecting them. So, you know, what's in this draft OCP is similar to the other areas within the regional district where we have large water bodies. So I just wanted to highlight that fact for everybody's information.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak for the first time? There's a lot of people on the screen.
I just wanted to say, if anyone's having issues unmuting or anything like that, you can pop something down in the chat and we'll see if we can help you out. But, you know, if you'd like to say something, feel free to unmute yourself and call out that you'd like to speak or indicate in some way. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Dale Mickey, 9648 Sterling Arm Crescent. It was brought up earlier that all RA3 properties are now moving to R1. Is that correct?
Yes, the new zoning bylaw has the residential zones split up as R1 through R6 essentially. So all the existing acreage residential zones that are RA1, RA2, RA3, and all the current single family, two family, and multifamily residential zones fit within that. So it's just a change in the code for that lot.
Okay, because I have some property that is RA1, RA3, so now that'll all be the same at RA1.
It should be R1, but I encourage you to have a look at the maps and make sure that's the case. And if not, then reach out to staff and we can help you look at that.
Thank you.
And I just, if people want to go over sort of their property specific information, you know, specifically related to the zoning bylaw, Alex had mentioned, you know, reach out to staff, but you are welcome to come into the office. When our office is open, there is almost always somebody in the planning department available, and we can look at your property up and confirm what your current zoning is and what the proposed zoning is. That's something we're always happy to do, and that's part of the public information, and we want to make sure that we're getting this right.
Thank you. I want to remind people that this is your opportunity to verbally have your representation. If you think that the proposed changes within the OCP are going to affect your property, please get up and make comments. This is your opportunity. Once this hearing is over, then there won't be any more opportunity until after the bylaws pass. So I see Joe. Do you want to unmute yourself, Joe?
Joe Monterfey? Yeah,
yes. Don't call me Joe, call me George.
Oh, sorry, George.
Just kidding. Joe Monterfey, George Monterfey, 10016 Sterling Arm Crescent. First of all, I have to commend the ACRD on the complexities of all this. Reading through as I could today, one of the things that isn't a bylaw issue, but it comes up in the regional district policies, and it was the development of land in a manner that suits and is appropriate to the site. And that's in one of the policies of the ACRD. Anybody that's been around Sproat Lake knows that there have been some developments that have been months of breaking rock, or weeks and weeks of hundreds of truckloads of material moved into a site. My first question is about, when do the regional district, was it the building inspector that looks into when a development is in a manner that suits and is appropriate to the site? Is that a building inspector's, or is that a development permit thing?
Yes, Thank you, Joe. That sounds like a policy we have in the official community plan, which, intend to guide development. The specifics of, what a building site looks like, how big a building is, and the groundwork that needs to happen on there is really regulated in the zoning bylaw and the building bylaw. So I know there have been some big developments on certain properties at Sproat Lake, and when we're looking at that as staff, we are making sure that it complies with things like zoning and the development permit guidelines and the building bylaw. The policies like developing land in a manner that suits the character of neighborhood really belong in an official community plan that again intends to set the vision for future development, and the zoning bylaw really sets the implementation of that vision. If that makes sense.
Okay, thank you for the answer to that. The other question was, it was right in the terms of regarding building to the 200-year flood level. There's a term that's used as flood construction level. What is the flood construction level? Is that the level of the 200 meter, or is that another term that I'm not familiar with? I think it's in 3.4.3.
I appreciate that. So the flood construction level is something that we have defined in the zoning bylaw. And it's essentially the minimum height that a building needs to be constructed above a designated flood area. I can read out the definition that's proposed in the zoning bylaw right now. Flood construction level means the observed or calculated elevation above the natural boundary of a water body to the underside of a floor system or to the top of a slab on grade for buildings located within a designated flood area or within an area that is subject to or likely to be subject to flooding. The definition goes on to say, in the case of a manufactured home, the ground level or top of the concrete or asphalt pad upon which manufactured home rests. An area below the flood construction level shall not be used for habitation, mechanical or electrical infrastructure, business, or storage of goods damageable by floodwater. So again, that flood construction level is that minimum level that the components of a home that are not designed to be flooded needs to be above that flood area.
Okay, I think I've got that now. The other question about building, the combined coverage of accessory buildings and structures is, I think that's a 5%, but I now see that they've removed the number of temporary structures that are permitted on a property. Is the roof area of a temporary structure added into the combined coverage of accessories and structures?
So the draft zoning bylaw has removed any reference to a maximum number of temporary buildings or the maximum time period for which temporary building can be placed on a property. And these are things like shipping containers, boat shelters, car shelters, tent structures, and things like that. So rather than deal with a maximum number of those, the intention would be to include those in the same way that we would regulate an accessory building. So that maximum 5% of a lot that would contain a accessory building. So the accessory building would not be able to exceed the maximum, the 5% of the registered lot area, and a temporary building would fit within that calculation. So the roof structure, the roofed area would be included within that maximum lot coverage, as well as the minimum building setbacks from the lot lines.
Okay, but there still remains that there's no limit to the number of temporary structures. Is that correct?
In the current draft zoning bylaw, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay. And the other one that puzzles me is how on earth the recreational vehicle uses on residential lots is going to be managed, even if it isn't going to be interpreted incorrectly, because there's one way I think you could interpret it, and that is that it says that one recreational vehicle can be used for up to 15 days in a year, which fair enough. It means that somebody could stay in an RV just about every weekend, which would be legitimate, or could stay for a couple of weeks on a holiday, which would be legitimate. But it doesn't really clarify that if one just changes RV, does that start over again? Or does it mean one RV on one lot for 15 days, regardless of whether you've changed the RV or not?
Yeah, that's a good point. The intention of the zoning bylaw would be to allow for a maximum of a total of 15 days for any RV being used as a temporary dwelling in an R district. We'll highlight that that is one section of the zoning bylaw that is proposed to be changed. Currently, the zoning bylaw allows 1 day in an R district or 30 days in an A zone, and the draft zoning bylaw would allow for the temporary dwelling in an RV up to 15 days, as you mentioned, in the residential zone, or up to 60 days in total in a year in a rural zone, but not to be used as a short-term rental use or as a commercial campground.
Okay, so is this going to be complaint based? I can see neighbors standing by with stopwatches, or how is this going to be measured and adjudicated? And is there a penalty, or how will it be dealt with by a bylaw officer?
Sure. So I'm happy to answer that question. So all of the zoning bylaw, or all of the regional district bylaws, are we enforce on a complaint basis. That's the regional district's bylaw enforcement policy, which is available online, and we're happy to talk further about this sort of offline with anybody that has any questions. So we, as staff, bylaw enforcement staff, do not go out looking for things. We respond to written complaints, and then would investigate. And then, as if this bylaw was adopted the way it's in the draft form, there is the ability to issue tickets, and based on the evidence and et cetera required.
Okay. Thank you. I guess I have one more simple thing, and it might be just it's a small point, and that is 3.4.3. It talks about, no, I'm sorry. It was to do with the definition of a private moored facility, and there was a term used about boat lift, and I think it should have said boat dock, but I'm not sure. It was right in the very beginning of the private moored facility, part 2, interpretation on page 22. It mentioned boat lift, and I just don't know why it said boat lift. I think it's page 22 and the interpretation. It's a small detail, but I can talk to you about it later.
Yeah, we're trying to seek that out for you there, Joe. But yeah, if there's a typo or a misuse of a word, that's something we can look at. If you want to highlight that to staff, that'd be great.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Chair recognizes Danielle.
Danielle Murley, 11,000 Central Lake Road. I don't know if this is addressed in the OCP or in the zoning bylaw, so you can tell me to defer this for later if it's not part of the OCP. I'm just wondering, when it comes to the flood construction levels, does the OCP deal with septic fields? So I understand that if you were to have a basement that was below it, you could use it for storage, but not habitable space. But what about septic fields that are below that FCL?
Yeah, we would rely on Island Health for that. And I mean, that's the flood construction level deals with buildings, and that's a requirement of the zoning bylaw. If the ACRD had a floodplain bylaw, that would be the appropriate mechanism to deal with things that can be stored on a lot, or septic, or infrastructure, landscaping. But certainly, in the event of a septic system, we'd be leaning on Island Health for their regulations for the placement of that near a water body.
So just so I understand, potentially you could have a septic field at a lower level than you're allowed to have a bathroom.
So we, as part of the building permit process, we rely on a design from a registered on-site wastewater practitioner, and they meet down health
Okay,
regulations. So we once again, we lean on Island Health as the regulatory authority.
okay, thank you. Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak for a first time? Any person who believes that their interest in property is affected by this bylaw? And reminding that is, I spoke before that it would be adopted. Well, it's that it will be voted on, and it will be voted on at the next board meeting on March 22nd. So this is your opportunity. So I would encourage anybody that would like to speak, now is your time. Yes, please.
Joanne Vessler, 10504, 9421 Simple Lake Road. I don't know where that's like 10 years ago address. Okay. These things always make me a little nervous. But what I wanted to say is I've been watching this OCP come together. I've been watching the bylaws being written, and the old OCP really needs an update. I mean, I looked at the old one. Things measurements are in feet, for instance. So this really needs an update, and I appreciate all the work that's gone into it. I know people are really upset about docks, but as I understand it, the initial draft of the docks situation was taken from provincial guidelines, and then we backed off those provincial guidelines because all of the kerfuffle. So really, if we just stuck with the straight provincial guidelines, it would be worse for people who like their big dogs. So I just wanted to come out and say, I appreciate all the effort that went into it. I've read through it. And I think it's great. So thank you.
Thank you for that. Yes, please.
Thank you, Joanne. Just a comment on the updates of the OCPs. That is a project that the staff intend to lead following the completion of the zoning bylaw review project. So that's that anticipated timeline that I mentioned earlier that the board has set that really sets in motion the completion of that project by around summertime. And following that, we do intend to begin projects to update the 6 OCPs that we have in the region. And they date from 2007 in Long Beach to 2014 is the newest one in Banfield. So they're all not really representative of what the community needs and wants in many cases. And we are looking forward to doing that work in these communities. So thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak for the first time?
May I add something, please?
Oh, yep, I see you, Nancy. I just wanted to make sure that there was no one that wanted to speak for the first time.
Oh, sorry.
I don't see anybody, so please, Nancy.
Thank you, Penny. I just wanted to add my support to the notion of a made for Sproat Lake policy on or bylaw on docks. We do have a unique situation here, like places like the Okanagan. And so I would like to see us have some leniency on those bylaws. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there something in the chat?
I saw a hand by Duncan Murphy, I think it was. I don't see you on the call anymore, but oh, I see your hand again. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Hi, sorry. Yeah, I'm here. I'm not sure if it's affected by this amendment, but somebody mentioned earlier that the minimum lot size for any residential development is 0.24 hectare, which is 0.6 of an acre. And there are like many places around the lake that are less than that size. So I don't know when that was changed or if it's going to be, if it was before this one or, but I wonder why that was, is that how that came about? And You know, if that can be, if they can get a variance on that, or is that set in stone? Or
Be happy to answer it. Can we just get your address as well?
oh yeah, sorry, 9493 Faber. So along Faber, like a lot of those lots were 1 acre, and many of them were subdivided, and many are on both sides of the road. But obviously 1 acre splits up into half an acre on either side, not 0.6. So I just wonder why that change was made, and if you can subdivide or build 2 residences.
I appreciate that. Yeah. So the 0.24 hectare or 0.6 of an acre that's supported in the residential use designation in the Sproat Lake OCP has been in place since 2013 when the OCP was adopted. That was something that was discussed at length in the last update process for the OCPs. A lot of that has to do with the level of servicing, because we do, and particularly at Sproat Lake, we don't have any community water service or any community sewer as well. So if you have on-site services in the form of a well and a individual septic system, the minimum lot size is actually 1 hectare, which is 2.5 acres. If you were to develop in a way where you have individual wells or intakes from the lake, and you were to do a common septic system as part of like a Fairline strata, for example, then the OCP would support that 0.24 of a hectare minimum. But that's where that number came from. It had a lot to do with the ability to service development on those lots, and if there is a change that is desired in the community that can be accommodated by the way developments are serviced in the future, then let's have a conversation about that as part of those future comprehensive updates. We'd be happy.
It does seem that there are like multi-dwelling developments going up around the lake, which would be using a lot more, they would be in proportion using a lot more sewer and water than a 1 unit on a half an acre.
Yeah, there is also some policies in the OSP that deal with density bonusing as well, where if you are if you're rezoning for a development and you're setting aside a certain percentage of land for green space or open space, you can transfer that density to the developed area on the site. That intends to focus development in areas where they should occur, and then protect sensitive areas.
Right.
While doing so. So there are some options in there, and then there's also options for multifamily residential as well as commercial, as you mentioned. There have been.
Right. Okay. Sorry, I apologize that it's not to do with this amendment. It's already happened. I wasn't, but that's something I could come down to the office and talk about maybe.
Yeah, Duncan, I think you raised a good question. It came up. It's come up earlier too about existing lots. So in the OCP and in the zoning bylaw, generally the minimum lot size is 0.6 of an acre, and that's intended to apply to future development or future subdivisions. So there are lots of lots that are less than that, and they they're legal the way they are. They just can't be subdivided in the future. So by changing the zoning bylaw or the OCP, we can't, and we're certainly not intending to require people to add land to the property or anything like that. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear. So the existing lots that are less than 0.6, they're legal. They stay, they stay that way. What would apply is the setbacks, et cetera, in the zoning bylaw. So I just wanted to clarify that for everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have another chat here from DeLone Abercrombie. If you'd like me to read it out.
Yeah, please.
This is from DeLone Abercrombie, who spoke earlier. For float dock size, provincial guidelines on Crown land was 12 square feet, and new draft Sproat guidelines is 16 square feet. I don't consider this much different, and the guidelines for public and private land are based on vastly different parameters. And then she follows up by saying, sorry, I mean 12 by 12, and the new guidelines are about 16 by 16. Barely big enough to sit a few chairs. Public health encourages us to have coverage from the sun, i.e. gazebo cover. Really 16 by 16 is not big enough for this. So thank you for that that comment alone. Again, highlighting that the size of improvements that are located on a dock or affixed to a dock is regulated in the draft zoning bylaw, and this feedback is helpful, and we encourage people to continue giving us feedback about the dock regulations in the zoning bylaw. And once again, you could find that in that October 2022 draft. So encourage people to have a look at it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir.
Okay, is there anybody else that would like to speak? I don't see anybody on the screen. Is there anyone in the room that would like to speak? For a first or a second time? Encouraging you to speak your mind at this point. If you have anything that you think is going to affect your property by the changes that are being proposed here in this OCP bylaw, now is your opportunity. Seeing nothing? Okay. Does staff have anything else they'd like to add at this time?
No, I don't think so. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So I will say to public that is here, please be advised that members of the board of directors at the ACRD cannot receive any new information related to this bylaw between the end of this hearing and making a final decision on the bylaw. If any member does so, the hearing could be invalidated and would have to be held again. We've already held it once again. So with that in mind, does anyone have any final comments? It's hard to keep track of everybody. Great. Okay. All right. Thank you. So I call for a first time. Is there any further representation on this bylaw? I call for a second time. Is there any further representation on the bylaw? Okay, yes.
You know what? I'm sorry. It's just that I've lived on this lake for 30 years and I'm really passionate about this. And I don't understand why they won't change. I mean, it's not going to affect me. My house is built. But why won't you change the 30-meter setback for the foreshore and the upland? Like, I just don't get it. Just so what if Bamfield has it? So they're a completely different community. I used to be the public health dietitian out there. I served them for many years. They're completely different than Sproat Lake. Just Mike, can you just, why won't you change it? Like, why are you so resistant? Can you share anything more than what you've said?
Yeah, the answer. Sure. So we do appreciate the feedback, Alon, and you know, this is the format for that. The direction on the OCP amendment and the future zoning law really comes from the board. So all of the input that we've heard here tonight, the letters we've received ahead of time, the agency referrals, and then of course the comments both in the boardroom and online will be summarized in a comprehensive report for the board to consider at the next board meeting on March 22nd. The board will be considering the Sproat Lake OCP amended bylaw specifically and voting on whether or not to move that forward or to direct any additional changes. So it's you know, you're in the right format for giving your feedback and having your voice heard on these issues, and just know that you know, all of this information will be compiled and brought forward to the board, who ultimately are the decision makers on these bylaws.
Thank you. Is there anything further? Last chance here. Okay, I call for a third time for any further representation on the bylaw. Okay, that was it. No, hearing no further comments, I declare this hearing terminated. Thank you all for coming and participating and giving me your.
How was that?
Thank you.